Hello and welcome. Welcome back. Welcome to the stream that will be the last stream before me taking a week-long break. And then streams will naturally come back because that's how breaks work. But you know, really savor this one, I guess. We gotta, you know, gotta get the most out of it or something. Hello, Nano. Welcome. Elias, Nikki. Nikki with the 50-day watch or 50 stream watch streak is kind of crazy. Call me a fish because I'm getting in the stream. That's beautiful, Hubbledopsy. I'm continually baffled by the poetic prowess of my chat, and that is just another instance of casual genius being dropped in my presence. Welcome, hello, hi. I am super tired right now. I am like sometimes I start stream and I'm like tired, and today I'm like starting stream is like, you know, my eyes feel heavy, like they're gonna close and I'm gonna fall into the oblivion of a dreamless sleep. And you know, that is, you know, my doing probably, or arguably, I don't know if like the uncontrolled inner workings of the mind count as my doing. or if I can call that some external factor inflicted upon me. But I'm here, so I don't know. I don't know how long this stream will necessarily be. I was kind of hoping that like, oh well, I can like do a nice, good long stream if it's gonna be before the break, but maybe that's just not the case. Uh, so yeah, you gave your main character a panic attack, Nano. That's pretty cool. I hope you wrote it well. I feel like that could be very compelling, just depending on how it is written. You know, having experienced right a few panic attacks, right? In my little life, they're very like it's a lot, right? And it's very intense. And one of a surprisingly overwhelming experience, right? Which uh, yeah, I think could work really well in a narrative, depending on how it's executed, right? You're also hoping it's written well. Yeah, I suppose that makes sense, right? I think often as writers, most of us hope that our writing is well written. I'm sure there are exceptions. Uh, I would love to meet someone who writes and like genuinely doesn't care if their writing is good or not. Uh, that seems like something that someone would like say is the case, and it's not really. Like I don't know, because maybe they would think like that's cool or subversive. Um, but yeah, I think most people care about the quality of their art when they make it. Uh, would you want to cover it this stream? I posted a snippet in stream submissions. I mean, maybe, right? Maybe. Have a family member of the MC tell them to calm down. I hear people try that. And it might work. Hey, calm down. Calm down, calm down. Stop your panic attacking. Stop hyperventilating and rolling on the floor, you know? Um, yeah, I've found one time I had a panic attack like in public, like in a bathroom. Luckily, I made it to the bathroom before the panic attack started. I was in a coffee shop, and luckily, I was like a few blocks away from a close friend's house, and I went there and sort of like fell, like collapsed onto their couch, and then they were like, and I had another panic attack, right? Of course. So then they're like helping me calm down, and I found that you know they like put some noise canceling headphones on me and got me some water and were instructing me to breathe. That was all very helpful. That was quite nice. There are definitely things that can be done, though I think saying calm down, yeah, is not one of them, right? um, it so works. It changes the emotion. Yeah, yeah. The panic attack just listens, as it is known to do. Yeah, we can maybe read that. I mean, prose is pretty cool. I that might be good. That might be good for me today. I'm really not sure. I don't know. Hello everyone. Hello fish. Hello, Tiny Tim Cowboy. Welcome. Glad to have you. Always a lovely thing. Considering the people she's with at the time is a seasoned adventurer. Oh, so we're having like a panic attack in fantasy. Okay, this is kind of cool. So we're writing like a fantasy story in which mental health is a theme. I think that's cool. I always had this thought of trying to run a D&D campaign and getting people on board with like a D&D campaign or fantasy role-playing game that had like an accumulating trauma system where I think adventuring is horrifying, Right. I don't think anyone decides to go out and adventure, first of all. That's like an absurd notion that someone would just want to go out and like um, kill things and put their life at risk. I think one is only like realistically driven to like adventure, having like very adverse life experiences. And then you go out and you're just like murdering shit and putting your life in danger and watching your friends get hurt and get beaten down by the world. And it would be really cool to me, I think, to run a game where you accumulate, these mental complexes as a process of that, and then it becomes a game about, you know, I mean, almost being careful about how you approach things as to not like incur that kind of damage, but then also a role playing element of these characters having to like really keep each other sane throughout the adventure. Darkest Dungeon esque. I'm not familiar with Darkest Dungeon. If that's uh, if that's the case, then maybe D&D PC gets a therapy session as part of their long rest, right? Um, yeah, role played out in character. A bunch of traumatized people trying to hold each other together. That's a narrative that I would be quite interested in telling and seeing told. Anyway, considering the people she's with at the time, is a seasoned adventurer who once had a party member with PTSD, though obviously doesn't call it that yet in the universe. And her younger sister is that definitely high energy herself. That's kind of cool, right? So that means you have this like younger adventurer who's dealing with these, this panic and anxiety over whatever, right? And this other person is kind of guiding them in that way. That's really cool. That's really fucking cool. Writing prompt Wednesday is up in the Discord. Wednesday came so quick. I'm glad you're doing the writing prompts, Wobble Dobsy. That's cool. Oh, she isn't I see. So she's just someone, and the seasoned adventurer is kind of helping her through that. That's cool. That's cool. Um, yeah, yeah. No, it's good that y'all are doing the writing prompts and Wobble Dobsy. I'm glad you came to the writing workshop. What, like a week ago. I thought that was okay. It was like a good workshop. Not the best I've attended, but it was nice and generative. Got lots of things written, which is cool. She's a 19-year-old noble going for a walk in the park with her um, younger sister and her hired guard, who is the adventurer. I see. That's cool. Okay, so we're looking at like fantasy sort of from a removed non-adventurer perspective of the noble. That sounds cool. That's really interesting. That workshop was so fun. It's great to hear from someone so talented. Yeah, yeah, she's a good poet, um, and definitely had some good stuff to say. Uh, yeah, got some things written. Yeah, I mean, we can read your thing. Buffering nano. Um, what is it titled? Am I? Is it new? Did you just? Has it just been in there for a while? Am I like just sort of like tweaking? Um, oh, working on little fantasy novel. I see. And document is the name of the novel. Oh, right. This is what you were. Okay, so you put it in the thread. I understand. Would like to highlight a little section I wrote of my MC having a panic attack, dissociative episode. Context for the cause not included because it would get too long. Okay. Okay, so it's short. It's a little snippet of writing, which I think is cool. We can maybe dive more into uh, uh, how the prose is functioning. It's going to be grim political fantasy in the later chapters. But while I'm setting up the world building for the reader to understand all that, I'm having a struggle with her recent traumas for a while. That seems like a good way to do it, right? It introduces us to our character through, kind of putting us in her headspace directly, right? And then once we've engaged with that, we know her really well as we get into some of the more and we really like probably care about her at that point if you execute that well, and then we can get into like the politics and we have like a really good background to engage with or root for this character in some capacity. I think that seems like a good approach. You know, the danger, of course, is as you're investigating like a character's traumas, it could be like too heavy and too much too quickly, and also maybe like if there's no action in that, no, like if it's just, you know, ruminating in the mind, right? That's certainly something to, I think about and be conscious of as a writer, right? To not be too, you know, in our own head about it, which is interesting. It's an interesting challenge, but I know you're also trying to like flesh out the world, so that's maybe an opportunity to include those scenes of things happening. And I mean, from your other excerpt that we read before, right? I think you jumped into action and things happening quite quickly, so that's a good thing. I don't think you'll necessarily struggle with that. Oh my gosh, the camera is not a black screen. That's awesome. Cool. Get that. It's a sneeze. Sneezing is nice. It's really like, I don't know. It's like a weight lifted off of one's chest. Uh, um, let's see. Oh, y'all are talking about doing poetry together, Wobble Dobsy and Nikki. Feels unfair on me though for someone of my talent to do a companion piece to something of your talent. Get those words out of here, Wobble Dobsy. Um, you know that's to compare such things is irrelevant, right? And you're a writer with a unique experience and vision, and that's the beauty of collaboration in art. Is you're taking two people who are necessarily different and have fundamentally unique experiences, and, you know, involving them with each other. I think the camera needs glasses. I mean, yeah, the autofocus is always a slight struggle, right? um, but we do our best here. Hello, Astrid. Welcome in. First, your talent is snap. Second, it would be good practice for developing your epic voice. Right? Yeah, it's all practice. My personal experience with panic and dissociation is over a much longer time frame, which has been sped up for Rose, the MC, and explained by her having repeated major traumatic events happening to her. Gotcha. So she's kind of like speed running. She's really speed running trauma and speed running her mental illness diagnosis in fantasy therapy. That's cool. Yeah, I definitely make sure, right? I think when we read your previous chapter, it felt like we were moving through a lot very quickly. And I think it is okay sometimes to like, even if it happens quickly, right, to make sure it has time to breathe and have time to feel natural, right? Because, you know, I mean, you know the human mind, right? And your own experience. Sometimes these things evolve in these very like unintuitive, non-linear ways. Um, Hi, Ishmael. Welcome. What you have there is between page 43 and 44. Gotcha. It's excellent that you've written so much, right? I think we read your first chapter a couple weeks ago, and you're making a lot of progress, which is awesome. It's impressive to me as a non-prose writer who can sit down and occasionally type out the 1,000-word little like short story thing and then run out of steam. All right. Here is our little panic attack scene. Looks like it has some dialogue and such. I know, Dandy said dismissively as she pivoted to hang upside down with her knees hooked over a branch. This is so me. I've heard it 1,000 times, she said, swinging back and forth. I already love this. I love this because I do this, and I love climbing trees and hanging from them and all of that. I think it's one of the few true joys in the world. Betty looked at her with a stern expression before flatly staring. And yet you won't truly know until it's all too late to forget again. My heart sank under the weight of her words. I began thinking about that alley again, the Nriffilus. I know where my mind is headed, I thought. Can we... Let's change the topic. I need to make sure she understands what she is saying, Betty stated, and just as she turned her head to me. Oh, Rose, are you all right? She asked, concerned. You're paler than a goat's wool. I don't know what happened after that, or rather, I'm not sure enough to put words on it. All I can say is that it felt like my senses and internal thoughts had swapped places. I had a hard time figuring out what was going on around me. That's a really cool descriptor there, right? My senses and internal thoughts had swapped places. I almost think, I mean, I know you're sort of going for like the I don't know what happened, like not having much to explain it. But also like to dig into a line like this, right? I feel like would be really cool to just get more of this, right? That feeling of like my senses are directly wired to the panic in my mind, and it's like all of that kind of stuff, and like the feeling of sounds and sights and how those happen. But maybe that comes later, right? In terms of another recounting and digging into this sort of new experience, and um, it probably makes sense to sort of bring that out slowly, right? Given that this is maybe like, I mean, I guess it's not the first, right? Because we have there was what like I know where my mind is headed, right? So we're sort of expecting this thing. This has maybe already happened before at this point. 16K is the point at which the snippet is from. The snippet being the newest text. So basically, yeah, gotcha. It's her third breakdown. Yeah, so I wonder if like, hmm, yeah. I guess if this is the third one, right, it might feel like, the first one is obviously like terrifying and panic and like no idea and truly like no words for what is going on and like fucking weird, right? And then the second one is probably like still quite unexpected, right? And then by this time, by the third, right, obviously we have this feeling of expectation, and maybe at this point we're able to start connecting the dots and bringing in more of these things. It's interesting to think about, like, I mean, I like the first person, and particularly in the past, right? Because this is all like, looking back, right? She said as she pivoted, she said, right? This is sort of like a first person past tense situation. My heart sank, right? So one can think about like the perspective from which this is being told, or one might have more words to talk about it as well. I don't know. To be clear, even if Betty had stopped immediately, it was already too late. Oh, for sure. Yeah. Rose isn't used enough to catch it early enough to stop. Yeah. And I think uh, that's totally fair, right? Um, yeah. We'll read the rest of this. It's not very long. In the few visual glimpses I can recall, it was like everyone was a form of silhouette, or maybe more like they were standing right in front of the sun, yet had no light around them. Either way, it all happened so suddenly. Just 2 minutes earlier, we were talking about Lion's girly scream. What I know is that Betty rushed to a nearby well for some water after asking Dandy to hold my hand, though the only part of that I actually remember is the image of Betty walking away. How I know more than I remember, I have no clue. By the time she came back, then I drank water. I think my panic had mostly subsided, though everything still felt so surreal. Everyone seemed like a dimmed half silhouette. However, that slowly faded throughout the hour. I like this, right? If we're talking about like the actual experience of a panic attack, this is like very, very real, right? The sort of panic attack hangover where everything is different and weird and unpleasant. Um, at the time she came back and I drank some water, I think my panic had mostly subsided. Though everything still felt surreal, everyone seemed like a half-dimmed silhouette. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see, I guess, like, I think something that's important to think about, and it's hard to tell with like this size of a piece. But I think the idea is really thinking about like the progression, right, of how you want to tell the narrative of these panic attacks, right? Because the first one, right, is necessarily going to be different from the second, from the third. And since this is, a story, since this is a narrative, right, we're able to continue to build and iterate and show our reader more as we move forward, right? That's kind of how prose has to be, right? So we can't keep saying the same things. And I don't know how this right compares to the first panic attack or how it's described, but it'll definitely be useful, right, to think about how this can build and where this panic attack kind of takes place in the broader story and development of this character. Like I think this does probably add some things that maybe she didn't have the first time, depending on how the first time was, right? Like this time she understands that, Betty and Dandy are here to sort of like help calm her down, help, alleviate this situation. And maybe that acts as a contrast. So I like that she specifically like remembers this thing, right? Holding the hand, remembers that her hand was held, even though she like doesn't have the memory. I think that's cool. And maybe digging into the detail like this of the new feeling of comfort, right? The of like understanding that other people can help with this thing. Um, and I mean, certainly I'd love to see after this, like the conversation, right, that they have afterward of like trying to understand this thing once she's, maybe done fading. uh, and I would certainly be excited to read the conversation between what Betty is the seasoned adventurer slash guard, who's doing all this and maybe talking to and helping explain that past with that other person. Um, I feel my panics anxiety could be more visual, show how they're perceiving things differently and make them change. Yeah, I think I agree with that. Right, when, like, the thing about a panic attack, right, is you've got like two ways to write this here. One is this is enough detail to evoke a panic attack and make someone who's experienced this or even heard of panic attacks or is familiar with other people having panic attacks, it's enough for that person to go like, oh, right, this is pretty obviously a panic attack. However, you will always have readers who don't have that experience, right? And I think we always have to consider as writers, right, the things that our readers might not know and might not understand. And it's our one of our jobs as writers to sort of share new experience, right, with people to show something they haven't seen before, and especially in this sort of fantasy setting in this unexpected place, to really like dig in, right, to the idea of that can show a reader who's never experienced or never understood a panic attack just what that thing is. Because right, I've experienced the panic attack hangover, right, and it is this kind of haze and this miasma, and mine lasted like 2 days, I think. Um, but but most people probably haven't, right? So dig in, to just to have more to spend more time with it. So I think this is a detail, right? Especially as the part that she would remember more, right? The everything being surreal and slowly coming out of that place, right? Could almost be a whole paragraph in itself, right? That two sentences, right? Um, and even just for the sake of exercise as a writer, even if it doesn't make it into the final, sort of cut, um, it would probably be good for you as a writer to see like how much detail can I give to a small experience like that. Just popping in to say hi. Well, hello, stylish fail, and thank you. My target audience is people who have had the experience and can resonate, which also means I don't want to make it too visceral as to not trigger them. It's a fine balance, but I think it might add more descriptors if that's your advice. Well, one thing, right? So, the flip side of like thinking about the person who hasn't experienced these things and then thinking about the person who has. I think when we write for, this kind of falls into me, this idea of writing writing the story that you would want to read. And by that I mean, or the story that like a younger you would have wanted to read, or a story that represents you, right? Um, and the thing about representation in media, right? It's like I've never read personally a fantasy book that engages with the idea of people having panic attacks, right? And I think it was very cool when I first read a fantasy book that really was like looking at something like depression, right? I remember The Way of Kings and Kaladin, who gets like really depressed and mopey all the time, and it's sort of annoying, and he's just always a downer, and he hates his life, and it was really awesome, right, to see that in a hero, and it was really well represented because it did dig into those experiences. And I guess what I'm saying is when you are representing and someone is being like represented on the page, I think it can feel like increasingly rewarding to describe that experience very vividly. Right? I mean, I think about let's say a gay character, right? To something to represent me or whatever. Um, we can have a character who's like mentioned as gay, and that's cool. I'm like, okay, this author is including that experience in the book, right? And then we can have the character who's like gay, but we like, and maybe a main character, but we don't really like talk about it that much. And then we have the character, and then we have the book that is like a gay romance that discusses like the intricate details and pain of these things. And I think we can understand how the reader who is trained to share their experience would get increasing value out of more detailed representation. Now you're saying, oh yeah, the ending was rushed a bit because I could feel myself getting triggered from trying to recall my own experiences to write Rose. I'm a good bit unstable myself. I literally couldn't add more detail without risking my own mental health more than I was. I'd have to take it in many takes. Yeah. So I think that's really important, right? And it would certainly be bad to pressure, and I don't want you to feel any sort of pressure that you have to take this route, to describe this in very strong detail, right? That if that's bad for you, that's definitely something to be careful about, right? Um, and yeah, so that's really important, right? To when you are sitting down, right, making sure, well, no matter what, since it sounds like you intend to engage with this idea a lot and you're going to continue writing about these things, making sure that in the process of writing, you are doing so in a place that is safe and comfortable, and you have water and you're not going to be like overstimulated by like sound or music, right? And whatever it is, and you're like wearing a clothing that's like comfy, right? And safe and all of this stuff. uh I mean, I've directly had the experience. It's funny. This is connected to my panic attack. So I was at the coffee shop and I'm sitting there, right, writing about depression, right, and suicidality. And I was like, yeah, being in the middle of the coffee shop is the perfect place to engage with like my deep seated experience of mental illness and like trauma, right? And so and then I'm realizing as I'm like digging into these things, like I'm like really opening myself up to like a lot of the pain, and then suddenly I'm not in a very safe place. I'm in like a loud place with bright lights, with music playing, with like a person next to me, and I just like collapse, right? And I have a panic attack. So that's obviously the extreme example of like what not to do. Um so right, I acknowledge that. It's very important to have that safety in the process of writing as a writer, and that's something to cultivate. And I also think the more you can intentionally make sure you're setting yourself up, asking yourself, is today a day where I'm stable enough, right? Because we have ups and downs, we have different days. Is today, oh, I dropped my pencil. Is today a day where I'm stable enough, right, to, trying to get the pencil with my foot. Is today a day where I'm stable enough to engage with these ideas? Right. And that's a very responsible, healthy thing to do as an artist, right? Can I dig into this today? Can I not? And if you're not, you work on another section, right? You work on something, or you skip over it and you say, I'm going to come back to this. Um, I think, like, as advice to you, I guess, um, it can be really cathartic, right? To deeply engage with these ideas and put them on the page, as scary as it can be. It's very scary. Um, but I would encourage you to try. Within that sort of framework of doing so safely, uh, because it could be immensely rewarding for you and for that sort of potential reader to see that on the page. Um, Now I know there's like the sort of concern maybe of like writing something that would like potentially trigger a reader, but at least like right, this is where the idea of like progression comes in, right? And you can sort of signal in your story that things are building up, right? And they're going to continue to be told in a more immense way, and that kind of shows your reader, the trajectory of things. It might be bad, right, to have a super visceral, detailed panic attack just come out of nowhere. I agree that could like scare a reader, right? And I think that's where something like, oh, the actual panic attack isn't so visceral, and then maybe we dig into this part of it, the cool down, right? And then next time we talk about the onset really heavily, and then we like lose all of this in blackout. And then the next time, right, we can, kind of keep pushing into it more. Uh, is a way to approach that if that's what you want to do. Um, yeah, I think there's a world where doing that could be very healing for both you and for the reader. Though I can't claim to know, exactly how that will go for you, and that's why that comes with the caveat of making sure to do these things with caution. And of course, right, a book can always carry a trigger warning, right? That's increasingly common, and I think increasingly like a valuable thing to do with works of art, right? Is to have trigger warnings, because this is functionally like an accessibility feature, right? To say, you might have this difficulty when approaching this experience, so I'm warning you about this so you can like prepare yourself for it. I also think this could be really helpful for you, Nano, right? Is as much as proportionally as much as you decide to dig into the experience itself, right? And the sort of suffering of the panic attack, right? We'll do white on the graph. So let's say we're graphing panic on here, and this is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, this is like 0 stability, right? So we have panic and we have comfort. For every something we can do is for every like panic that we create, right, in our character that kind of happens in the story, we can make sure that we also show our reader the process of being comforted and the process of healing, right? And then they kind of get comforted and they come back to normal. And then we can engage with like more panic and more acute experience. And then they can, need to be comforted and heal again. And I think that could be especially beneficial for you, for both you as a writer and for the reader, because then you're making sure, right, in this very real way, for every sort of suffering and every bad thing you show about the panic, right? You also show the very pleasant sort of or positive reality of having people around you and having people to help and heal and help our character through this situation, right? Because then I think that's also if you're writing for that person, right, having panic attacks, if you're writing to represent, then you're representing the whole story, that there are ways, right, to be helped through these things. There are ways to calm down, um, and maybe that's where you take this line as an opportunity, right? It's slowly fading, is you have throughout that time, Betty and Dandy being supportive, and maybe Betty in a very real, experienced, helpful, comforting way that is really good for our main character, for Rose, right? And then maybe Dandy is still figuring it out, and there's like a little bit of tension there, or you don't need to include that yet. But it shows, Betty helping Rose drink the water. It shows, the slowing down and the comfort or whatever. I think that could be good. um, for example, the Amazing Digital Circus finale. Should I watch the Amazing Digital Circus? I've seen stuff about it online. It seems like a very uh, uh, sort of important moment in queer media right now. Finale triggered me so much I had to watch it in 3 takes, and I'm still not done. And that's okay, right? That's we almost approach media from our own space and our own safety. Um, can we agree the overlapping square brackets look like the schematics of a mad scientist? Yeah, I mean that's me and my we'll say schizoid tendencies, right? For some reason, that feels more fiction to me than the magic system. What feels more fiction to you? You mean just like the idea of like the sort of more positively spun aspects of like anxiety and panic? Or are you referring to something else? That. The vague that. Law and Order SVU is the most triggering show ever. I never miss an episode. Yeah, yeah. Sometimes it be like that, right? Yeah, but I also think, right, Nano, if that's what you're referring to, right, this sort of balance of positive against the panic. That plus having to write people around her. Yeah. So I mean that I think for many people that is a fiction that is not real, right? And that is a fantasy. I think most people don't get to have people help them calm down and people help them go through stuff. Uh, but it does happen, right? And I think it can exist. And I think, it can also be portrayed in a very real way. People trying to help, and it's not always the same for everyone, right? Maybe there becomes a tension. I mean, this could start to outline a really interesting story of Dandy sort of trying to help Rose, or not Dandy, Betty, Betty trying to help Rose in a way that is familiar to that other person, right? That they helped, as you mentioned, the adventurer with PTSD, um, and having to understand that like maybe Rose needs different things, right? And Dandy trying to help and just not really understanding what's going on, and maybe making things work, but then slowly figuring it out and slowly finding this way to like sort of cling to each other and support each other. Um, she couldn't help him. I see. Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot to explore there, right? There's an immense amount of tension and narrative weight and pain to I could think of Betty looking at these things happening and remembering this person who they cared about and couldn't help, um, and maybe wanting to do better this time, maybe wanting to figure it out, and or maybe feeling like they can't or don't know, right? um, I mean, you know I think when you talk about wanting to dig into sort of the psyche, right? And talk about this mental illness, right? Those things are very the most real things are probably those most difficult, painful things. Um, but fantasy gives us like a removed space to talk about this process and this trying to understand and this suffering and this um, and fantasy we can write things that aren't real, right? Fantasy we can I mean right fantasy comes from the idea of creating something wishful, something that we might imagine or want, uh, and fantasy can have better endings, or it can have good endings that are complicated, or it can represent things in a way we wish it had in our life but we didn't get, right? Because we didn't have those people. um, so I'd encourage you to think about that, right? How can this art, this sort of beautiful writing and art be used to extend your own experience, right? Because you have an experience, I have an experience, many people have this experience, right? But fantasy as a vessel gives us this space to explore, right? A fantasy story can explore depression, we'll say, the Way of Kings, Kaladin. He's this, hero who's embodied with this power to fly and cut up bad guys and heal really quickly and, talk to spirits and shit, right? And he has the very crushing reality of, like, losing his family and depression and trauma and, like, enslavement that, like, weigh down on him and crush him. But through the fantastical elements, you get to explore, this character got to explore these things in a way that you could never explore in a real story, in a real experience, right? Dune, right, explores the idea of power and ambition and yeah, I think absolute ambition, right, is one of these ideas in Dune. And it's something that you could never explore without sci-fi, because how can you it's just galactic jihads and stuff, right? In the end, her companion I talked about threw his life away, using a high-stakes situation that could have been diverted as an excuse to sacrifice himself and save her and others in the party. Damn, that sounds fucking real. I mean, that's such a good idea, such a crushing narrative thing. But it's only, truly, I think it's only earned, right? If we really try to truly deeply engage with those feelings surrounding that, right? And like the probably guilt and fear and anger, right? In Betty, right? The thing with her companion is also why she was so stern with Dandy, whose dialogue in the start of the snippet was trying to trivialize the trauma required to awaken power in the magic system. Yeah, right, and these are just such awesome tensions, right? I talk about tension so much because that's where stories happen, right? That's where narratives occur, right? Is in these like struggles between ideas and between people and between oneself or one's mind, where things feel like they're gonna rip apart at the seams and then they resolve, right? And I think that's the trick of writing, right? Is trying to understand how to wield that carefully, because it can't be all tension all the time. It can't be all trauma, all pain, and it also can't like avoid tension. You know, and things need to release. Yeah, I don't know. And I think right in this, you do a really good job of, looking at the panic attack in this oblique way, right? In this way that isn't so direct, isn't so fully described, and hinting at it and pointing to the idea for the reader. But there could be a reward, right? There could be a great reward for you as a writer and for your reader in trying to move forward from that place, to continue to elaborate. especially if it's trying to be a focus of your narrative. Um, yeah, that's sort of what I think. Do you have any other questions or comments, or does anyone have questions or comments about the things that I've said, or does anyone vehemently disagree with my words? That's always allowed, and um, or have alternative comments or alternate comments for Nano. Not fully appreciate the feedback. I'm glad it is appreciated. Um, and I think it's really important to remember this, right? The being safe, the being comfortable. Um, I think if you have anyone to talk to about your story, um, right, to have someone to help alleviate those tensions, and that would certainly be a valuable thing as well. In addition to all of these, to be able to share it and to be able to air those things and discuss that. I know not everyone has access to, that sort of trusted um, space, someone who we can like share art with in that way. Um, but that's also something to think about in this sort of toolkit of safety as a writer. Uh, taking breaks and stepping back and then digging into things, and you know being very attentive to one's own space, corralling the mind's tendency to wander off into these scarier places. It's hard, right? It's admittedly not something that I'm great at, and I've avoided confession in my poetry for a long time. Um, but confession, right? This is sort of, in a way, it's like confessional prose, right? To take one's experience and put it on the page truly, and there is an immense catharsis in doing that for some people. So, yeah. But yeah, safety. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing this, Nano, especially sharing something that, concerns a topic that is so difficult, right? I feel anxious. I'm going to disappear. Yes, absolutely do that, Nano. Take care of yourself. Drink water, curl up, dim lights, less sound, um, tactile things, right? Whatever it is for you, I'm sure you know. And yeah, be well. And thank you, thank you, thank you. It really is a wonderful thing that you share this, and I think that's really important and admirable as a writer, if you're still listening. Writing is hard for a lot of reasons, right? Writing is hard because of the technical, of course, and writing is hard because of sharing it being difficult. Writing is hard because of editing, but writing is also difficult because we're sometimes forced to stare at ourselves and our own experience and our own anxieties and traumas and troubles, and like unroot those things and unearth them and bring them back into the forefront of our mind. And I think that's a beautiful thing about writing, and the fact that one of the best things about that is when we do that, um, it shows something incredibly strong for other people and for the reader, and to see someone, right, echoing our experience in literature and writing can be one of the most affirming experiences as a person, as a reader. That's very cool, but that's very hard. yesterday, I, I, I was doing this poetry showcase or queer art showcase online. There were not just poets. And someone said something during when they were talking. I think it was a visual artist, and they were talking about their pieces, and they said that art is a way that we can have conversations through time. I thought that was a really lovely phrase, right? Art is the way to have conversations through time. Because of course we can have conversations forward, right, to our readers, and they can look at an experience that we once had, and engage with that. But we can also have conversations like to the past, to these pieces of ourself that are buried or not otherwise engaged with, or pushed away in some capacity. And that was a really striking thing to say, right? I think art can comfort the person in our past who didn't have someone to comfort them at a certain time. I mean, I've done this. I've written poems to my past self, and that was a really helpful thing. I should do that again. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's just one of the many reasons that I'm so fascinated with art and art making. Is that it's this kind of magical thing that we have, that can really push into places in the mind or extend out into other people, and like sort of touch without touching. Um, and everyone has the ability to do that. Everyone has access to that thing if they're just patient and honest with themselves, and open and expressive and caring, right? Like these kind of emotions really are requisite to like a positive art experience. I think that's really cool. Yeah, art. In rambling mode there, I guess for a minute. I can't help myself. um, yeah, I've gotta like, jeez, I'm like caught on cables over here. Um, yeah, that's something I've been thinking about. Getting back to writing poetry that engages with my past. I wrote a poem yesterday that was, sort of considering this idea. I am gonna read it because I can do that. Um, it's called "I'm Like You." I'm like you. A processor only delving into my past when prompted. I'm a big passive data set with a mouth that can't write songs. I'm not thinking about anything when I look like that, off in space, and people start asking if I'm okay. Is there suffering in there? Yes, but it's like industrial waste, stuffed under a lake bed. Inert, if not stirred, but leaching into and off of everything. I've been drinking so much water lately. But I can't taste what life tasted like ages ago. I just keep trying. All new, all the time. A processor, 1,000 coiled somethings without a mind. Just a broken body someone wants to tear down until I am nothing. I like that one. I wrote that last night. after having a long conversation with a friend about heavy topics and stuff and heart to hearts and all that. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, my AI sympathy or something. um, but that first line, right? That the whole thing just started there. A processor only delving into my past when prompted, and I've been thinking about using art, this way, art as a prompt to push myself to engage with things in my past and things in my present, because I don't seem to do so automatically. I don't seem to really deal with like the ways that I've suffered or experienced or even like loved in the past or in the present. Um, and I think art, right, has the very actual real capacity to transport one's perspective in that way, to place oneself in places that are not here but that were here or could be here, you know. Yeah, I like that. I think I'll read another. I think I'll read another, depending on who has things submitted to me. um, I'll have to make sure to send Nano a message later, make sure they're doing okay. uh Nikki, do you have things? Wobble Dobsy, do you have things submitted? Or I don't know who else is around. I haven't seen too many people. Um, I guess people could be lurking, so I'll shout. I'll shout to everyone. Not really. But yeah, if anyone has things submitted, Messier, hello, welcome. Hello, welcome. Good to have you. Do you have anything submitted to me? Anything you want me to read? We're like just in the we're just in the middle. That was a nicely measured monologue. Yeah, right. I was absolutely shouting. I always have something. Yeah, we've been reading a lot of. I got a. Oh yeah, a Campbell's Soup poem. You do have a few poems. That's the one with like the one with the letters, right? Okay, that's cool. We're gonna read that. I like skimmed that when you submitted it, and it looked super cool. Discontinued Campbell's ABC Soup, and I will do the screenshots of the version that's hard to read, because I think it's cool, even though it is definitely hard to read. Y'all will understand. Definitely some cool formatting things. Hi, bro. Hello, bro. New Wild 20. How are you, bro? I like bro. That's a good way to refer to people. Bro. No one ever really called me bro. I know like a lot of, I guess I was never in like those super like sports or like masculine circles where people are like, "What's up, bro?" Was never really my crowd. Maybe I need more of that in my life. um, 2/3 bro, 2/3 Brodus, 2/3 Brutus, Brutus like Caesar. Um, can I give you a dare? I mean, you can give me a dare. Like, chat can dare me to do anything, but like, am I gonna do it? Like, probably not. If I had to guess. In California, dude and bro refer to everyone. I like dude. Yeah, I'm always big on dude. And definitely used that a lot when I was in California. But I was never really bro. Maybe they use bro more in Southern California. I don't know. Maybe I just like dude. Yeah, I don't know. I like sometimes even being like what's up man, like to anyone, is like sort of gender neutral as well. Here's our poem. Oh, this is interesting. We'll see. It'll be interesting how well or poorly this kind of shows up on stream, right? My nephew has called me bruh. Yeah, bruh is a whole different thing though, right? Like bruh is its own beast. It's a whole different like linguistic situation, I feel like. I do like bruh a lot as just like a sort of term of reaction, right? Like bruh. That's good. Really excellent. Please do my dare. I can't do shit unless you tell me your dare. I can't know, you know? But like I can't, these things can't be like agreed upon beforehand. There's like a streaming TOS. Like someone could come into my chat and say like, "Hey, do my dare." Like say the N word. I'm like, "No," you know. YouTube commenters are a whole different world. Yeah, they're just in their place, you know. They're just doing their thing. I like how persistent they are. They come in and they're like, "Hey, hey, 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 streamer, 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 do my thing, do my thing, hey," you know. That's funny. Probably bad that I have like no one like like moderating the YouTube, and I can't even access my own YouTube chat while I'm live to like moderate anything. Like I don't think I can like, you know, oh, I can. Oh, I can. I can do it through Restream. That's cool. Oh heavens, I'm arriving. Well, I'm glad you've arrived, Cole, or Cabbage. Um, oh heavens, I'm arriving. That's like, that sounds like a Victorian person announcing their climax. You know. Um, oh heavens. Oh heavens, my dear. Anyway, we're gonna read this poem as we do from Messier, discontinued Campbell's soup, with some missing letters as we go. That was my first thought too. I'm glad we're on the same page. Oh no, I should have never thought of it that way. When you're hitting it, but you still want to be dignified. Oh yeah, you must be prim and proper and dignified. I'm arriving. You know, it's good. It's good. Messier, do you have any questions about this poem? Maybe you sent them with your submission. I know you do that sometimes. I was given a prompt, write a poem about the effects of capitalism on your poetry. When listening to Margaret Atwood interviews, I've been inspired. Um, it's hard to read, so I gave the uncensored version. Ironic. Yeah, it definitely. It's hard to see how well it shows up on stream, right? I can't. Let me make it bigger, so I can see if this like smaller, not smaller, less clear letters. Yeah, there's still somewhat visible. Okay. Um, yeah, this works. This works. Oh my god. Hello, hello, hello. So goofy, so silly. I love chat. This is why streaming is enjoyable. Dude, New Wild, you can just say your dare. You can just say the thing. Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Are you is you know the is the person on screen just make you all scared to say your thing, your funny dare? You're new wild. 20. Be wild. Live. Pursue the dream in your heart. Express the truth that you need to express. Live freely and truly. That is what art is. What is art if not the freedom to give your dare? Oh my gosh. Goofy as fuck. I think it means YouTube will be like, oh my gosh, there's like engagement in this person's chat. So I like your emotes not being emotes, Nikki. Okay. So let's read this poem. Discontinued Campbell's soup. Discontinued Campbell's ABC soup. We can't use the letter E, they tell you. Words come cheap. Dares do 10 push-ups? Man, that was so, like, underwhelming. Oh, sorry. I would focus on the poem, but like all that hype, all that fucking hype, all that fucking hype, New Wild. That's like ban worthy. That's like you you I I was so excited for something interesting, you know? And um I will though. I will do 10 push-ups. I will, just for you. Watch, it's strong imaging. We'll tip the camera down. It's still gonna be hard to see. I don't know if I can put it that way. Okay. There's my shitty room. I'll move the camera arm. I'll move these books. I really don't think you'll be able to like see it. My dares to not do 10 push-ups. Oh shit. Oh shit. I think if I go like behind chat here, you can see me, you know? Yeah, right? Okay. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 13 is fine for now. I didn't do 10. I did both dares. Right? I did the dare of 10 push-ups and the dare of not doing 10 push-ups. By doing 13. Okay. Back to this. He's behind me, isn't he, chat? Yeah, he is behind you. Haha, he's doing push-ups. Okay, back to the poem. Enough nonsense. Enough nonsense. Sometimes we just gotta lock in. Have you heard an orchestra play Leroy Anderson's Typewriter? I've never seen it performed, but I mean I've seen like the video of it. It's pretty funny. Is that a typewriter? It is a typewriter. Yeah. Good boy. Okay, that's fucking awesome. I appreciate that. All right, here's Messier. Here's the poem. We're gonna lock in. Discontinued Campbell's ABC soup. We can't use the letter E. They'll tell you. Words come cheap, but that was before we got the utility bills for water and gas and words and waste management. We knew we were in trouble when Telemundo could no longer afford the letter O anymore. So when the team scored, they just shouted, GG. One day, even G will be rationed. No sound for the encore. We got in our bunkers, ducked for cover, ran for the hills, watched as subscription printers stopped putting down ink for the letter A. You should know the singular. Don't need it for pull the trigger. And the sorry son of a bitch couldn't live without syntax. We speak now, in careful refrain, mince it down to pieces. What was once I love you has now become I, heart, you. Except the letter U is no longer for sale, no more you or your thoughts, your understanding. We thought they wouldn't come for I, because they worship I am that I am, but I am that I am didn't make much sense, so they took away M and T and H, so now they'll only worship I, me, myself, and I. we can't go on like this, talk like this. At least they haven't started taxing the period yet. And when there's no longer an alphabet to afford, we'll express ourselves in new ways beyond the censors, like a question mark, exclamation point, ampersand, heart. That's that's fucking dope, is what that is. You know, um, that's really cool. It's such a cool visual work. Um, and there's almost a part of me that wants to read it like what can like is like is and just like cut out all the all the letters that I don't have, but I can't imagine that would be particularly engaging poetry reading. Um, and like but it's so cool. And I love like some of this wordplay uh going on throughout this. I mean, like the Telemundo thing, right? And then like GG, right? We don't have the O, so we don't get goal, right? So we just get GG. Um and like that's fucking awesome. And and then this idea with like the I heart you, right? Almost takes on this other tone, right? Where it's like the idea of the simplification, um, and like the capitalization, you know, the capitalism, the capitalization of our language, right? Um, and so things become shorter, they become more efficient, right? And this idea, right, discontinued Campbell's ABC soup, where they're literally saying like we don't have enough, right, to put these letters. You know, it's cheaper to just take out some of the letters that we don't need. I don't know if this is actually the case. If like Campbell's ABC soup had the whole alphabet and then they started taking out letters or something and to cut costs. It is true. So Campbell's soup, uh, uh, yeah, GG is gamer speak for a good game. Yeah, yeah, um, yeah. It's really really clever here. Okay, so they discontinued ABC soup. I see. So it was too expensive to for the alphabet. Fucking awesome. You were thinking about using strike through, but it didn't look censored enough. Yeah, I really like this visually, because you can still read it, right? You can still see the words. Um, but then when you're like, it works really well that like by the end, moving through it quickly, I was really starting to trip up because like you're trying to like read the word and your eye gravitates toward the letters that you have, and it sort of breaks the word in a really weird way. So it gets hard to read. I love this I section. Oh my gosh, right? We thought they wouldn't come for I because they worship I am that I am, but I and then this part, right? I am that like this poem is kind of unperformable, right? This is very much a poem that engages with the page uh, in a way that, you know, I don't think can be verbally expressed, right? I mean, you can't even really speak sort of like the idea and the connotation of I heart you, right? Or, you know, this end. Um, and the idea of just the expression of a question with no content. Uh, so it's really fucking cool, right? Uh, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna read it again. It's just the whole I section just screams Christian exceptionalism. Yeah, I mean it's like America, the selfishness, the wanting, the you know, the ego and the, you know, yeah, yeah, Christian exceptionalism. or just the capitalist virtue of selfhood and independence, right? Discontinued. Campbell's ABC soup. We can't use the letter E, they'll tell you. Words come cheap. But that's before we got the utility bills for water and gas and words and waste management. And I love this, right? The way I think it's a really cool thing you do here, right? Water and gas and waste management, right? These actual things we have bills for that, sort of end up taking away our ability to do things and have resources, right? And then to just kind of include words in here, I think is, like it works really well, I guess. Like it sort of sets up, like it's almost expositional, right? Where this poem is a narrative about taking things away, and removing. New Wild, you gave me a dare, so now I get to give you a dare, and my dare is for you to stop sending messages in my YouTube chat. Um, they'll tell you words come cheap, but that was before we got the utility bill. So it sets up this exposition of a world that's like almost like we could see this is almost like dystopic, right? Where they're like charging for words, and it costs money to use language and to express. Not in like it's sort of like a way to read it and a sort of like sideways implication of this framing, but I think it's kind of cool, and to frame this idea, right? To frame this as a sort of modern dystopia, I think is a good thing to set up for the reader, right? It's a good thing to set up because as we get to later, I think we get this very real demonstration of sort of something happening in our lives, in the life of the modern person, on the internet, where words, right, these abstractions become like further abstracted into something kind of further from the original meaning and less, right, where it becomes easier to just express with less and just to text in shorthand, and it's sort of the opposite of this sort of expression in art and poetry that we're doing here. There's a part of me that almost would love like these last four characters to be like emoji, you know, uh, not something often engaged with in poetry. Um, it would give a much different meaning to the poem. I think that it becomes like anti like texting and shorthand and like simplification of language, and that might not be totally what you're going for. Just a thought that I had, or just the idea of like using, um, uh, just the idea of using emoji in a poem is kind of cool to me. And maybe this isn't the place for it, but like that's something you could definitely consider as a page poet, or writing page poetry. These things that are impossible to speak, right? Because language and letters, right, are abstractions of speech, right? They're abstractions of sound put onto a page, right? And speech is just sort of an abstraction of like meaning and communication. And then when there's a point where we can abstract speech so much and our words so much into symbols that it truly like what is it, we it becomes that we can no longer, right, we can no longer at all um, even speak these things, which is really cool. Back in the day, every single text, even characters, was a chargeable bill in tax. That's true, right? There is like a reality to that where texting at the beginning was charged and kind of very expensive, right? And so it became simplified in that way. But what's interesting now, right, is we aren't simplifying anymore for the sake of like cost efficiency, right? The simplification is genuinely just like a like a mental shorthand, right? Where we no longer it's no longer of necessity, it's of convenience. And I think that's really interesting, um, within the idea of this poem. I'm definitely too young to have, had my texts incur direct charges, unfortunately. So I don't know this world where, um, you'd be texting someone and be trying to like spare every character to be able to text this person more or text them for longer. Unfortunately, that is before me. I liked how the worship of gods became the worship of self, since that's all religion becomes. Yeah. um, yeah, we go from. It's interesting because we have a lot of different ideas here, right? We have cost, and we have like bills, and then we sort of have like entertainment and television, and then we have God in our bunkers ducked for cover, ran for the hills, and watched as subscription printers stopped putting down ink for the letter A. You should know the singular. Don't need it for pull the trigger, and the sorry son of a bitch couldn't live without syntax. And so then we're having like this sort of apocalyptic, maybe tying into the sort of dystopia that we're setting up, right? uh and then we get this idea of like love. We speak now in careful refrain, mince it down to pieces. So like really that when there's like a social economic uh sort of pressure for efficiency, right? This is the idea, I think, of that something gets lost in there. um and I think it's a clever turn, right? It's a clever turn in this to keep I, right? Because I mean, I the individual does not speak. I the individual does not engage in conversation. Conversation only exists with multiple, and I think this really does speak to, in a very modern way, in social media and like shit, like the parasociality of platforms like this one. I mean, like I have a parasocial relationship with my own Twitch stream, um, where like true community itself becomes abstracted, and the only thing that's left is like one's own existence, one's own I, one's own desires and ambitions, and you know, um, all of that, right? It gets interaction with others, genuine interaction gets taken away. Um, a streamer doesn't think we're real in chat. Yeah, basically. Um, can we go on like this, talk like this? At least they haven't started taxing the period yet. When there's no longer an alphabet to afford, we'll express ourselves in new ways beyond the censors. And this idea of censorship is like another interesting thing, because you have this phenomenon on social media that really uh, 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 where people have to self-censor, right? And self-censorship has become a big phenomenon, a big linguistic thing on the internet in the age of algorithms, right? Where take a statement, right? When we say, like, instead of kill, we say like unalive on the internet, where we're forced societally through like the policing of language to express in ways that avoid and dodge censorship, right? Um, and then it you impose it on yourself so you can speak at all. beyond the sensors, with yeah, right. Sensors kind of does have that nice auditory double meaning, right? Of something that senses, a sensor. Yeah, the shit with all like the surveillance cameras and stuff is just fucking terrifying, right? Um, but yeah. So this kind of evokes that idea, um, which is cool. And I mean the idea that we're sort of like in this way, like sort of self-censoring a poem. Not that we're literally like doing anything, like trying to say anything that would get like blocked by an algorithm, but the idea of taking the poem and sort of making it unrecognizable in a way. Um, and poetry is this like, expression of honest speech and this expression of like a human kind of a truth. I think there's like a quite a bit of power in this kind of connection here. Um, Gen X uses emojis because they convey things in a single character. Millennials use the acronyms. Us Zennials blend the two. Yeah, maybe. I'll trust you on that. um, I wouldn't know. Uh, yeah, and then I think I don't know. Probably wraps around for Gen Z, where we'll just drop a skull emoji and it has all these like mimetic connotations and referencing things, right? Wilted rose, you know, that carries immense weight. Beyond the okay, unalive feels like something Orwell would come up with for Newspeak. I think that's what it's called in English. Yeah, I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read 1984. Um, but yeah, right. Uh, it is Orwellian, right? And I think that's why, when it's good to set this poem up as something dystopic, because this all is in a preliminary way dystopic and kind of horrifying and scary and unpleasant and all of those other words. Um, Not Orwellian yet, right? But yeah, the self-policing of language is the self-policing of thought, and that is what's discussed in that novel, right? Um, thought crimes or whatever. We're gonna take a little break, I think, and I will encourage you all watching to stand up, look away from the screen, to do something kind for yourself, drink water, stretch, do 13 push-ups. I don't know, and um, and then we'll come back in a few minutes. Just yeah, stand up if able. It's good for you. We'll be back. Welcome back. Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. That's me. Imogen, still. Still the same me. Uh, and we are still reading Messier's poem. We're talking about Orwell. I highly encourage anyone to read Orwell's essay Politics and the English Language. Was Orwell problematic? Yes. Was his essay good? Yes. These things can coexist. Thinking about it, seems Orwell pioneered gaslighting. He almost certainly wasn't the first. Almost certainly. Political language is designed to make lies sound truthful and murder respectable, and to give an appearance of solidity to pure wind. That's a bar. That's a real bar. I like that. On the topic of absolute bangers, yesterday I was reading, maybe it was 2 days ago, Pope Leo the 14th. I was reading some of his Magnifica Humanitas, which is his papal statement. He's the Pope. His papal statement on the church's attitude toward AI. There were some like there was some heat in that thing. It's a really really long document, but like just some bangers. That speech of his was banger after banger. I didn't see the speech. I hadn't even heard about it about this document until like a week ago or something. I don't know how I just like entirely missed it, but yeah. I ain't Catholic, but the Pope kind of bussin'. Yeah, Pope's bussin', and he's from Chicago, so that's awesome. Yeah, I'm like 50% of the way to converting to devout Catholic. Not really, but Catholicism has the best aesthetic of any Christian denomination. I will say that. I mean, the Pope is dripped the fuck out, and all the cardinals and shit, and all the stained glass. I don't know. Catholicism is pretty. Horrible things in the past, yes. Pretty, yes. I call it a speech, but yeah, I guess it was more of an essay. Yeah, or what do they call them? Some letter of something or whatever. And then yeah, and so like it's interesting to see like all the citations of that work within like the Catholic doctrine and referencing like speech of some other pope from like 200 years ago or whatever. Encyclical letter. Yeah, thanks. I kind of love love that the more conservative that American Catholics get, the more liberal the Pope gets. No, it's kind of incredible reading some of the stuff. Like that is talked about in that work, like the emphasis on like social welfare and like giving and like responsibility on like the like financial ruling class, like, and it makes sense, right? Because like the teachings of Christ are, very socially inclined. The Pope is like, Jesus didn't fucking stutter. Yeah, and all like the gay marriage stuff under right, Pope Francis, I think, was the one who made that shift. Like they seem genuinely like really fucking chill, like officially doctrinally, and it's interesting that then like culturally, right, Catholics are often very very conservative across the world. That's a really interesting thing to me. I heard the tailor who makes clothes for the Pope is gay. Yeah. Um, I mean, that makes sense. Gay people know their shit, right? Jesus, love your neighbor, and by the way, your neighbor is everyone. American Christians. So, more bombs? Yeah. No, it's real silly. I mean, silly is maybe the lightest descriptor of that. Hypocritical is mild, and um, horrifying, unethical, and cognitively dissonant is a step up from there, right? Here, but we're talking about poetry. um, Here is, we're going to read it again. Messier's discontinued Campbell's ABC soup. We can't use the letter E, they tell you. Words come cheap. But that was before we got the utility bills for water and gas and words and waste management. We knew we were in trouble. This is something I want to point out. I just love the visual of this we knew we were on the page, right? Because like 50% of the letters here are E's. And I think it's just such a cool visual statement, right? Because it just looks like WKNWWWR, and to have like the 3 straight W's, like there's like an alliteration that happens here, and of course the alliteration happens because it's just alliterative, right? It's just alliterative, but like to have it so highlighted, the WWWW, is really cool. It's really cool. We knew we were in trouble when Telemundo could no longer afford the letter O anymore. So when the team scored, they shouted, GG. One day, even G will be rationed. No sounds. No sound for the encore. I see. So yeah, they won't be able to say anything. We got in our bunkers, ducked for cover, ran for the hills, and watched as subscription printers stopped putting down ink for the letter A. Subscription printers is interesting, right? To elaborate on our linguistic dystopia, like this sort of idea. Like this makes me think of like Netflix, right? Like a subscription streaming service, but you need like a subscription service in this world to access language. Oh, it's really cool, right? Because you mentioned words, right? It costing money to text before, and it's really fascinating to me because it evokes the past, right? And like language having cost, but then it also like points to a future that is like different, right? I have an ink subscription. They do this. They keep trying to upsell me on the printer part. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. They would do that. Um, they have ink subscription. HP does it. So you like get a regular ink subscription filling. That's interesting. Subscription printers stop putting down ink for the letter A. You should know the singular. Don't need it for pull the trigger. And the sorry son of a bitch couldn't live without syntax. I think this dialogue here is really interesting. It's like quite a switch up from the rest of the poem, I guess. They monitor your ink and mail it to you when you get low. That sounds, yeah, incredibly convenient and dystopian, right? So this is interesting. You should know the singular. And don't need it for pull the trigger. And the sorry son of a bitch couldn't live without syntax. So I think we have like this literal scene of, right, someone getting like shot for caring about language and using language or something, which is sort of cool and interesting, and like it's like a world building, I think, in a way, like this poem's cool, right? Because it's outlining something like sort of real and implying a number of real things, while creating like a dramatized dystopia that we can kind of explore and live in, and it feels lived in. It feels like a world that we're sort of digging into and engaging in. That's a massive link. Right, and that's something I love. That's one of the ways that I describe art is we create a world in which our reader lives for a time, right, where they can explore, where they can like learn things, where they can like search for little details and beauty and all of that, and it sort of suspends us and takes us necessarily like somewhere else. And it's sort of like self-contained and self-justified, um, and that's very I think a good detail there. Hold on, I want to show this. HP Instant Ink, never run out. I love the footnote, and save up to 50% footnote with Instant Ink. I really want to make like a big footnote poem. Your printing service includes original HP ink, automatic ink delivery, footnote, hassle-free recycling at no extra cost, footnote on no extra cost. Where are the footnotes? Oh my gosh. I never run out. Printers require direct connection to the internet for participation. Savings claim claim based on monthly subscription cost. Automatic delivery. It's interesting. Recycling program availability varies. There you go. Change or cancel anytime. No, probably not. Or they make it like really fucking difficult, probably. Sustainability. Okay, they have some post-consumer plastic. That's nice. Anyway, yeah, this is kind of weird. This is kind of fucked up and too convenient for, like, this is consumer capitalism gone too far. I save time and money. That's what life's about, saving time and money. I mean, like, not that it's necessarily bad, right? Like, to get ink delivered, but it's just such a weird convenience. Like, just go to the store, right? I guess for someone printing like so much, like who's printing that much? I don't know. Yeah, and why does everything have to be a yearly, monthly subscription plan? Help us drive the circular economy? I don't, like, I know that means recycling, but I don't want to help you drive any fucking economies, you know? Like, that's weird. I I guess some greenwashing there. You should print out them footnotes and do a blackout poem. That'd be kind of fun. We put up with the horrors for the convenience in the wild world of capitalism. Yeah, basically. Maybe I think convenience is a horror too, though. Hi, Callie. When HP comes knocking at my door to bill me for printing my anti-everything manifesto, I'll send out a messenger pigeon with my last will and testament. Yes, and everyone will be waiting and take in that pigeon with open arms. As a chronically ill writer, I pay for the convenience, and that's understandable. You know, there are some hills we choose to die on, and some hills we choose to not die on, and that's okay, right? Yesterday I heard a Led Zeppelin song, and now I want to try to write something cryptic with contradictions using the motif of a Led Zeppelin, I see. Though I guess I gotta step up my crypticness game. Yeah, I mean, that's cool. Cryptic can be fun. Cryptic can be neat. Okay, we speak now in careful refrain. Mince it down to pieces. What was once I love you has now become I heart you. Except the letter U is no longer for sale. No more you. So I like this a lot, right? The letter U is no longer for sale. No more you, right? And just this letter U and you thing, I think is really nice. No thoughts or understanding. And I love that we go, there is no you. This is maybe like one of my favorite things in the poem. We go from there is no you, but there is an I. And I think that's so like fucking clever, right? That like the person is dehumanized. There is no you by consumer capitalism and the fact that there is only the crushing reality of I, right? Like, to only acknowledge oneself as I and not as sort of like a you in relation to others, right? And in this world where there can be I love you, right? Uh is so real, right? I mean that's such a like, I guess, concise or poignant way to describe a feeling that I don't think I even realized is present in modern society, right? The idea that the self is dehumanized by an obsession with selfhood, right? By the human, like the whole complete, you know, the whole sphere of being a human, right? The idea of being I is only like a small subset of this. And by hyper focusing societally on the notion of I and not including these outside notions, right? Like there is something fundamentally lost to the human experience. Yeah. Banger. Fucking gas. This is cool. We thought they wouldn't come for I because they worship I am that, I am that, I am, but I am that, I am didn't make much sense, so they took away M, T, and H. So now they'll only worship I, me, myself, and I. We can't go on like this, talk like this. At least they haven't started taxing the period yet. When there's no longer an alphabet to afford, we'll express ourselves in new ways beyond the censors, like... I like this, like. It's kind of cool. Kind of rhymes with the I. Like... that. Yeah. I like this poem, if we couldn't tell. Crypticness is pretty cryptic to me. Well, duh. It doesn't come natural like descriptive poetry. Well, then it's something to experiment with and try and fail at, and fail beautifully, and fail didactically, right? Um, yeah, this is very innovative. I've never seen a poem do this, right? And that's so cool that there are just these infinite ways to explore the way that language can be used. And like there's always something new and interesting and clever to be done. Messier, do you have any questions about this? Or does anyone have comments or questions about this work? Now would be an excellent time to express those things about discontinued Campbell's ABC soup. It's a cool poem. Fire. Yeah. Fire indeed. Comment, this is peak for real, no cap. Yeah, it is. I agree. It does not. Well, I'll try to like yap for a few more moments and let time pass by as anyone potentially types any thoughts or questions or things in chat. And in a few moments, then that time will be up, and we'll read the poem again. But yeah, I think it's cool because it takes something kind of fantastical and kind of directs it back at society in a way that it can mean a lot of things, right? I think that's a really cool thing about this poem is it points to a number of different ideas that are all within the same bubble, and you don't end up with these interpretations that feel like they really strongly diverge from like the core central idea of the work, right? Um, and that's cool. I don't think I got a question. I've been trying to pay attention to all the ways you in chat noticed IRL censorship that might not feel like censorship, or straight up is. Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting idea. I mean, something I think about like just during this stream, right? During the course of this poem. I've banned 2 users in my YouTube chat. And we censor, um, at least there's this perception of like censoring for like the purpose of like safety or like clarity, right? Like social media, like probably more things than actually get posted to social media get censored, right? And just get like cut out because they're like slop or like depictions of like horrible shit or violence or whatever. Um, and yeah, you're not one of those, Cabbage. um, and this is like a curious thing, right? Because there is speech that is dangerous, and that's a really hard reality, I think, to cope with. Is like, is there ethical censorship, right? Um, types any thoughts or questions in chat. Thanks, Cabbage. Um, but like we self censor out of fear of saying things, and I think that goes beyond like the social media example, where like the algorithm, but like we self censor ourselves and our expression out of fear. Um, it's very easy, I think of queer people who get like pushed back into the closet or sort of like normalize or simplify their queerness. I honestly think I probably don't express myself as fully as I could as a queer person out of, some perceived threat or fear or just like a general societal pressure against doing so. And like that's a censorship, but that's a censorship that's created culturally, um, without like a direct act to stop that thing. I think the idea of self censorship is actually something that's very fascinating to me. Example, discontinuing Campbell's ABC soup might not feel like censorship, but what if? And then at home printers stop printing A becomes an infraction on freedom of speech in print. Yeah, and that's a really cool idea to explore, right? Because what you're doing there is, right, you're creating a fantasy, right? This idea of, okay, the printers have stopped printing A, right? This is censorship. Um, which I think opens up the idea for the mind. This is the cool thing about like speculative things, and this is like almost sci-fi as a poem. Uh, there's a genre called like slipstream, which this is sort of occupying. Um, but yeah, what it does is you've had the sort of like artistic courage to speculate in an unexpected way. And I think what that allows the mind of the reader to do is to speculate in their own life about the seemingly innocuous censorships that they experience. Uh, I mean, I certainly think of the censorship of like propaganda in like media consumption and like or like the censorship of a 24 hours news cycle that's always like pushing forward to something new so that like continuing things and continuing atrocities get censored, right? That's a form of censorship, uh, that, a government censoring an outside world to its people, um, or to be algorithmically censored, right? Things like shadow bans, uh, or just like topics, being repressed by algorithms, right? These are things that happen. AI censors experience, right? AI censors experience by being trained on certain ideas and expressing certain things that are controlled and cultivated by the person who owns that, data set and that large language model, and then only those experiences are sort of put back to the user, right, and pushed back into society, and it creates a sort of self-referential thing, a closed loop that blocks out, outside experiences and sort of flattens existence, right? That's a form of censorship. I mean, it's just everywhere, right? As a Harrison Bergeron fan, I approve of the way you wrote this. Yeah. Even GG becomes a form of censorship, the sort of cheapening of words despite the meaning still being conveyed. Yeah, you lose something. And I've found in my life an incredible amount of value to just like calling someone on the phone, right? Because to text someone does cheapen experience, and calling someone on the phone cheapens the experience of having a conversation in person. Watching a Twitch stream or streaming on Twitch to share my ideas censors the experience of, me being able to share, this idea of poetry with someone face to face. I think parasociality, right? The fundamental thing of Twitch, right? And most social media is a censorship of experience, right? It takes this sort of IRL, funny to just use that acronym, right? It takes that IRL experience and puts it into a sort of approximation, and it's an approximation that's enough to fill the need. It's enough to sort of fill the need and make it feel like, I've engaged with other people's art and them and their experience, and this like negatively affects me as a human. Like this is sort of encouraging me to be a shut-in. This is something that's been kind of eating my brain lately, very bad way. Right, and so this approximation of existence is just everywhere, right? Anytime that we're choosing for something to be convenient, right? To live in a society where you must use a car to get from place to place is a censorship of an experience, right? It's a convenience. It's a shorthand for like walking somewhere and like seeing people on the way and experiencing your town and the people around you, right? I mean, I love this idea, Messier. The way that this, like, yeah, that's what I'm gonna call this, right? The censorship of experience, right? And maybe convenience is the censorship of experience, right? That's sort of an incredible like thesis presented here, and even in a very tactile visual way on the page, right, where it like makes it more difficult to read. It makes it laborious to take things away. Also, I imagine this world having another form of waste management where there are waste words and letters that need to be taken away. Graffiti butchered, a sort of secret police waste management. Yeah, that's fucking awesome. I might have to steal some of this for my dystopia. I might. I already have a Mormon theocracy with vice squads who go and crack down on sin. Maybe I need like a language police. I'm gonna write this down somewhere. I might put your idea in a D&D campaign or an RPG campaign. It's so good. Where's my D&D notes? General notes. What is it? Language police. Yeah, it's like a super authoritarian world in a lot of ways. So, um, that is an awesome idea. Yeah, it's fucking dope. um, Lamau, go ahead, sprint toward wherever inspiration takes you. I'm glad you're of that mindset. Because I want that idea. I feel like the only traits of the main character from Mashi or I'm strong. I like Cream Puffs. This seems unrelated. Um, I keep reading them back to back, and I love them together. Don't know what we're talking about. For real, if you've never read Harrison Bergeron by Kurt Vonnegut, you should. It's really short. Yeah, Messier. It's a really good short story. And I think the fact that you've written this would be a I think there'd be some overlap, and it would be cool. Um, yeah, convenience is the censorship of experience. I'm gonna I'm gonna write that on one of my cards. That's a bar. I have cards that I write little artistic bars on. Convenience is the censorship of experience. Fucking proverb out here. goes in the jar of wisdom. Okay. Anything else about this work? It seems like we dug in a little bit more with those comments. But I'm guessing there are no more questions, though if there are, y'all still have a few moments before I read this poem again. So wonderful that we get to read this poem again, and then we'll be off onto other ventures. Yeah, this poem's dope. Such a interesting way to. I don't know if you read a lot of sci-fi Messier, but this has that feeling of like the just really kind of innovative Bradbury Vonnegut, like taking like this notion of an idea and like building a world and a hypothetical future out of it that's very unexpectedly poignant, right? That's dope. And it seems like there are no questions. So, discontinued. Campbell's ABC soup. We can't use the letter E, they'll tell you. Words come cheap. But that was before we got the utility bills for water and gas and words and waste management. We knew we were in trouble when Telemundo could no longer afford the letter O anymore. So when the team scored, they shouted GG. One day even G will be rationed. No sound for the encore. We got in our bunkers, ducked for cover, ran for the hills, and watched as subscription printers stopped putting down ink for the letter A. You should know the singular. Don't need it for pull the trigger, and the sorry son of a bitch couldn't live without syntax. We speak now, in careful refrain. Mince it down to pieces. What was once I love you has now become I heart you, except the letter U is no longer for sale. No more you, or thoughts, or understanding. We thought they wouldn't come for I because they worship I am that I am, but I am that I am didn't make much sense, so they took away M, T, and H, so now they'll only worship I, me, myself, and I. We can't go on like this, talk like this. At least they haven't started taxing the period yet, when there's no longer an alphabet to afford. That's good sound. Period yet alphabet. Uh, we'll express ourselves in new ways beyond the censors, like things I can't say. Discontinued. Campbell's ABC soup. Um, Thank you for submitting that, Messier. Fucking lovely. There's a deleted portion where the writer doesn't have enough change to continue. Kind of a payphone. That's kind of cool. But yeah, it might not work. Um, like things I can't say. Wonderful editorial edition. Yeah. I'm like, well, I can't say them, so like, there's no way to express them anymore, right? Um, yes, thank you, Messier, for sharing your work, and thank you for experimenting so boldly with poetry. It is lovely and important and relevant to see the way that people take language and wield it in unexpected kind of flourishes. So thank you. And I really appreciate it. I really, yeah, thank you. That's all there is to say. That's all. That's the only thing. It's the most important thing to say in life. Is thank you. I think everything else comes next. Is secondary. Yeah. Lovely work. Thank you for reading. You're welcome. I love doing it, and yeah. All right. Yeah, I think that's all. I think we can just do a short stream today. Um, I didn't sleep well last night. I was up till like 2 a.m. It was really unpleasant. Um, yeah, many things weighing down on the mind. So, uh, and poetry is a lovely way to, you know, I guess today that was a very nice distraction from myself. But one can only distract oneself for so long before all the things start to creep back in. As expected, Led Zeppelin took a whole different turn as planned. Yes, unsurprising. Um, so yeah, that's all. Um, Thanks for watching. Keep making art you love. Keep appreciating the beauty in the world, and that's the cycle, right? The give and the get. Art. No streams for a week. I'll see you guys on Friday, August 7th, I believe. Thank you for helping me start writing. Thank you for writing. Yeah. Yeah. All right. See you guys in a week.